Okay, I think we're live here.
All right. Yeah, I see it.
All right,
My phone got alerted.
good. Welcome back, everyone. Craig and Jonah here today, and well, no one's going to be on camera today. We do have a guest here, James. James, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, I can hear you, Craig.
All right, James. We got into some battles over on Twitter about everyone's favorite topic of masturbation, and thought there's no better way to deal with this than to just get on and talk about it. So, James, for those that don't know you, why don't you just introduce yourself? Tell us anything that you want to, just kind of about your age, state in life, and things like that, and then we'll get at it.
Sure. So I'm married. I have 3 kids, 3 under 3. And I guess the relevance to this topic is I'm a convert. And so I had a very different life pre-conversion to now trying to live an authentic Catholic faith. And then the other relevant thing is my wife's been sick all year. She has something called TSW, which is a rare skin condition.
Oh my!
And it's sort of like a prolonged severe eczema, full body. Okay. And so that has affected the sex life, obviously.
Yeah.
And then we had our 3rd child in May. And so this, coupled with the postpartum period of our past 2 kids, really made me think a lot about the church's teaching on sexuality.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm coming from with when I'm talking about these things on Twitter and whatnot.
Well, you've always been very polite but direct in your sort of interactions with us, and I respected that. And so we make a lot of invitations to people that we come across. Hey, you want to get on? And most of them say no. But you said, sure, I'll do that. So we give you a lot of credit for that, for coming on. So if we can just fill in a little bit of the blanks, how long have you been Catholic?
I had my sacraments, up to First Communion, confirmation when I was a child, but because my mother was Catholic, but we didn't practice the faith in the home. So I never considered myself Christian. I kind of stepped away from the faith when I was like 10 or 11. And then, 15, 20 years later, I had a reversion or conversion. So it's been 6 years, I would say, since I started considering myself Christian.
And kind of roughly how old are you? You don't have to give exact age if you don't want, but
mid-30s.
Okay. And your wife is Catholic, but wasn't she had a conversion as well. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. She wasn't Catholic. She wasn't Christian. So I started my conversion while we were dating, and then we got married. And then afterwards, she was baptized Catholic, maybe like a year or 2 later.
So, after you came back to the faith, or started practicing as a Catholic, then she became baptized herself.
Right.
Okay. Do you identify with it on any particular spectrum of Catholicism, whether a traditional Catholic or do you not really, I guess, put yourself in any of those boxes?
I don't really put myself in any of those boxes. I mean, I'm more like a right-leaning, conservative-minded person.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things in like trad circles that I don't really agree with. Like, for example, the whole like all devout Catholics should have 20 kids thing.
Yeah.
And there's other things too. And I go to a Novus Ordo parish, and I don't parish hop. I don't look out for the TLM and that sort of thing. So I'm maybe a mixed bag.
Give yourself time. Okay. So walk us through a little bit then. So you were dating, were you so did you get married in the church, or did the conversion happen after you got married?
Yeah, it was sort of a mess because it was during my conversion, and it was also during COVID. So we canceled our initial wedding,
Okay.
which was going to be just like a civil ceremony.
Yeah.
And then during 2020, I think we got married, officially married later that year, but it was a civil marriage. And then as I was converted, but still learning about the
Yeah.
faith. And then I realized, okay, wait, this is not like our marriage is not complete. And so we had to get married in the church, I think it's called a convalidation. That was the next year.
Okay. Fair enough. So I guess kind of getting right to the whole, the big Catholic rule for married couples being no birth control, whatever. Is that something? What can you tell us, if anything, about kind of your approach at the beginning of your marriage and before you, let's say, kind of fully embrace the whole Catholic view of things?
Yeah. So before we were married, I wasn't Christian, so
Mm-hmm.
we had an active sex life since we were dating. And
Okay.
I actually never knew abstinence from like puberty to our first kid, really.
Okay.
And then, and then when I became Christian or became Catholic more specifically, and I realized, okay, this is not the way we're doing things. There's a few things that are wrong. Like we're using contraception, so we had to stop doing that. We had to get on NFP. Although, like when we got married, we wanted a kid, so we weren't really on NFP for long.
What was the contraception conversation like with your wife?
When you decided we can't do this, because it sounds like your journey was a little ahead of hers.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I was trying to remember that. I do remember it being an ongoing conversation. Like it took a while.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't only, for me, when I converted, I was like, I'm saved. Like I had spent so much time trying to figure out how to live my life as an atheist, and it's really difficult. There's like no anchor point, no like consistent framework to view the world in. And then when I became Catholic, I was like, okay, I want all of it, all the Catholic stuff. Just give me all the rules. I don't care. I'm going to follow everything. And so I was all in from the very beginning, before really understanding all the whys, like why these rules exist.
Yeah.
So as I was telling my wife, okay, we have to stop using condoms or whatever it was, she would ask why. It's like, I don't know why. I just have to stop.
This is what we're supposed to do. Yeah. Right.
And so I had to like go back to the books, figure it out, and then we had to have the conversation. And eventually she thought it was, either she thought it was reasonable, or out of respect and love for me, she just kind of went with it.
So it doesn't sound like there was a ton of conflict then between the two of you as you were making the transition to all the Catholic stuff when it comes to this.
No, I wouldn't say conflict, but definitely time. Like it wasn't an overnight thing.
Yeah.
And I think she started seeing the good that was coming from my faith. So that was part of it too.
So did you like start going to mass and she stayed at home, or was she coming with you?
Yeah, I started going to mass. I was going to daily mass alone. And then, I forget when she started. At some point she started coming to Sunday mass with me. And then maybe a year later or 2 years later, she was baptized.
Okay. So, sounds like you didn't really have any trouble making the jump from, let's say, kind of conventional marriage to we're going to not use contraception and all that anymore. How was it sort of embracing all the other stuff, and specifically the topic of the day, solo and all that? What was that like for you?
Well, before getting to that, I should say that my intellect always preceded my will. So when I first realized, okay, when you have to stop using contraception, it's not like we stopped right away. And it wasn't just because of her. I think, on both of our sides, there was a sort of, like, I understood the precept, but it was hard to follow. And it took time. It's sort of like, quitting pornography, which is another story. And then, so on the topic of solo. So yeah, as I said, since puberty, I was doing that, and also pornography.
Yep.
And I had tried quitting. This was even before my conversion. I was on the like NoFap forums, from just a purely like just to be healthy. I want to stop.
Yeah.
Because I recognized it as an addiction that was sort of I was a slave to, and I was like, I don't want this. And so I was trying to stop, and for a while, I don't know if it was like 2-3 years, and never just kept falling back into it. And then after my conversion, through a lot of prayer, going to confession, the sacraments, maybe a year later was like the last time I've masturbated.
How long ago?
This was a little bit into our marriage, so maybe 4 years ago.
Wow, that's a good run. Has it been difficult to maintain that, or has there been close calls?
There's been close calls, but like a handful.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
But yeah, overall that hasn't been an issue, just because like I accepted it as a mortal sin from the beginning.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was like, I'm not going to damn my soul. So I'm going to I was desperate to find any other way, sort of thing. Like, it's not something I even think of doing.
So, okay. And what was the porn or the solo, was one easier to give up than the other, or did they always kind of go hand in hand?
Yeah, they were coupled.
Okay. I think that's probably pretty common. Okay. So I'm just curious then, now that you're married, and because Joan and I talk about all the time, for us it seems that the gateway to the solo tends to be based a lot on how frequent you're being intimate with your wife. There just seems to be this kind of biological clock that starts running after so many days, and the body wants a release, and so the longer it goes on, the more apt that most guys are to fall into that. I'm curious, over the last 4 years or so, kind of what are the circumstances where you're like most tempted to do that, or feel the most inclination to do that?
So probably where things got really tough was after the birth of our first child.
Yep.
Because again, I had never been abstinent before. So when they told me we'd have to be abstinent for 6 weeks, I thought, yeah, that's fine. I'm self-disciplined. I'm driven.
We all think we are.
Yeah. So they said 6 weeks, but 6 days in, I was like, I'm done with this.
Yep, we can relate to that.
We can relate to that.
And this is sort of a sad thing, because like my wife, it was a tough delivery, and so she really needed the time to heal.
Yeah.
But 6 days in, I'm like, so I see you walking around, like, how's the healing, bro?
Seems like you're doing okay.
Yeah.
Did you have to duck? Did you?
Yeah, I mean, it got like at some point, not that time, but I was like slowly pressuring her, and at some point, I made her cry. She was like, you don't love me enough. Like, you're not being patient.
And was the pressure because you were like, soul is a mortal sin, this is the only way I can deal with this, and so okay, I get that. Go on.
Yes, which is from if I look back on it now, it's like, well, that's sad. It's like the option is either I damn myself or I hurt my wife.
Yeah.
But
it feels
so so where was I with that? Oh yeah, so we kind of powered through those 6 weeks. I mean,
but you made it through unscathed through those 6 weeks.
No, exactly. It wasn't unscathed. I hurt her. I mean, emotionally. And I think we probably tried to have sex earlier than she would have liked, as far as I remember.
Yeah.
But eventually she healed, and then we started an FP, and then 6 months later, I think it was six months, or maybe 8 months later, she was pregnant with our second child.
Okay.
And then the thing, and then it came up again at the birth of our second child. This time I was like, okay, I learned my lesson. I'm just going to shut up this time.
Yeah.
I'm a more faithful Catholic. I don't know. I was deluded into thinking it would be easier again. But then 6 days in, nope, I'm done. Like something needs to give.
That's the magic number.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the frequency like during pregnancy as far as having sex?
We kept having sex while she was pregnant.
No, but I mean, like, is it like once a week or twice a week, or like, I'm just wondering what.
Oh, frequency.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It was.
I'm just wondering because, like, we talk about the more we're intimate with our wives, the less attractive any of that stuff is. Anything else,
right? I would say it must have been once a week, because otherwise, it would have felt the pain. I would be remembering it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then, but yeah, this time. So again, at 6 days, I was done with it. But this time, I started thinking, all right, there's something wrong here. Like, it can't be that when you're just obeying the church's teachings, like your marriage gets strained and your marriage suffers. That doesn't make sense to me. Like, as a Catholic, my marriage should be stronger than ever if I follow the rules.
Yeah.
So I started doing a lot of digging, and that's when I found St. Augustine's teachings on this. I know you guys love him.
Well, we do.
Big fans.
Specifically, his book on marriage and concupiscence. So I read that one a couple times, and it really changed my perspective on this. And I don't necessarily. I mean, I know that his views on certain things are not like accepted church teaching now, but overall, the gist was like, St. Paul preaches chastity, and chastity is a very high virtue, and it's something worth attaining, whether you're married or not.
Yeah. And
he really makes the case, and it's like every other sentence is from the New Testament. So, and it's really well written. So it really made me realize, okay, this might be what I'm missing. Maybe what I'm missing is I'm just not pursuing this virtue at all. But by the time, I got too into it, then my wife had healed, so we got back into NFP, and then I just kind of shelved the whole chastity thing. And then, so we did that for like a year and a half, the NFP, and then, so one thing about NFP is the fertility period is like just a little longer than how long I can hold being abstinent.
Yeah, it's funny how that works.
That is so true.
Like, God definitely has a sense of humor. But I actually think, maybe it's part of the design because of the way I see what NFP is for. But putting that aside, I think the way I dealt with that over the year and a half is just by cheating. Like, I think there were a few times where we had sex where, like, maybe it was in the window or like right after ovulation or something, and we just got lucky, so to speak, that like she didn't get pregnant.
Yeah, all of our cheats have names now. So. Names and social security numbers. So, go on.
Yeah. So, and then she got pregnant with her third. This was last year, and then she got sick, and the sickness got really bad in January. So she was bedbound for like 3 months, and I think we abstained for most of those, probably the whole 3 months. But I was kind of burning out. I was taking care of the kids, taking care of her, taking care of the house. So it's almost like I was at war. I didn't have time to think about sex. But maybe as she was getting better, then it started, itching, and I was like, all right. She told me, well, the doctor told her it would take 2 to 3 years to fully heal.
Wow.
And now, I mean, technically we can have sex, but for her it's like at best irritating and at most painful.
Oh.
Um, so in my mind, it was like, all right, I got to pull up this St. Augustine book again, because it's going to be a long.
Myself with it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I've been kind of thinking a lot about chastity and praying about it, and reading the saints, and then we had that postpartum period after our third kid, but this time it was easier, and in the last maybe 6 months we've had sex like 4 or 5 times, but the times in between are like bearable. So like now I think it's been a month, and it's been a month, and I haven't had that crazy like 6-day want to climb up the wall type feeling.
Wow. St. Augustine did it, huh?
Is there anything about the book that St. Augustine's book that stands out to you that really helped you?
There's one thing which is sort of okay. So he has this notion that the time, I forget how he phrases it, but it's like the time for carnal generation is over, and now is an era of spiritual regeneration. So in other words, like don't be so focused on making babies, focus on evangelizing and saving souls. And I love my church, I loved my community, and so keeping that in mind, the fact that like, oh, if I make this sacrifice, if I hold it in, how much more energy and time will I have to give to my community and to like help people and to evangelize and to do ministry and that sort of thing. So just that, I mean, that's kind of an intellectual move, but that has helped my motivation to abstain.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the midst of this. Of course, I'm early on, 7 days in now, for a 2-month journey here, and I've been. To me, the problem, and I'm going to go back to what you said before. So you said that the fertility window always seems to be just a little longer than you can hold it. I'm curious, what do you kind of view it? When you're actively NFP or on again, off again, kind of what do you see as like this many days? I can, for the most part, can manage it okay, and then kind of what was your normal fertility window?
How long was it?
Yeah, because it seems to vary from couple to couple.
Yeah. My wife has it's like a very regular cycle. I think it might have been just like on like 10 days or something.
Okay.
Or 2 weeks.
Okay.
Maybe 2 weeks.
Well, that's on the higher side. Yeah, I mean we're always 2 weeks now, but we're pretty rigorously following the Marquette method.
Well, what's funny now, this is a tangent, but we were doing couples to couples, like symptothermal.
Yeah.
And we can sort of do it without a thermometer, without a calendar, without anything, just with like the mucus only rule.
Yeah. Yeah.
We won't have as many days, but like, and so at some point over the summer, I was following John Farrell and his whole thing.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And it's when I realized that for us, NFP doesn't require anything. Like she just has to go to the bathroom, and then she knows if she's fertile or not.
Yeah.
And so that sort of eliminated the whole like NFP is like contraception, because there's no act involved for us. It's just like a passive observation, and we know whether or not she's fertile.
Oh.
So I am perplexed by this. So reading Augustine shut down the urge to do anything for that long. Like, was that effective?
No, it's not. I mean, he opened the door for me, but there's a lot of things. Like there's a couple. Okay, first of all, we tend to tie love and sex a lot. I mean, I did. For me, like my self-worth as a man is like, how well can I please my wife, that sort of thing, and like how often our sex is, and how I feel loved as well. So when those two things were coupled, it was really hard to abstain, because if I tie sex with being loved, then abstaining is like saying I don't want to be loved for a couple of months, which doesn't make sense. Like that, your heart can't hold that contradiction. And so I had to learn to decouple those things, which took time and communication with my wife. Like it's kind of took a lot of back and forth. And learning to see, like now I see her love for me and for the family in other ways, like in what she does for me, what she does for the kids, the sacrifices she makes. Like that's all I really look for now. I don't really, well, I can't really look for it in sex.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an important part of it.
So when you said that it got difficult after 6 days, was that a physiological sort of feeling or was it mental, you think?
It's both. I think mostly physiological.
Mm-hmm.
But then my mind wasn't strong enough. Like I would, she would go to bed and then I would just lay in bed fantasizing. And like,
I can relate to that.
yeah.
Yeah.
But now, as soon as the thought of sex comes in my mind, whether it's, of course, it's always with my wife. I think of something else. Like I just shun the thought. I shun desire and I shun the thought of sex. And so that probably helps like physiologically too, but that's kind of a move of the mind first.
Do you still feel the physiological like symptoms, I guess you'd say, or does that not even happen anymore?
Not to that degree, not to that 6-day degree. It hasn't happened in a while.
You don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but I'm just curious, given how long that you've been going, does nature ever give you a break in the middle of the night, or does that not happen either?
No, that happens. How often? Maybe it happens
I'm really
once a month.
Okay. All right.
Is that a relief then?
Does it help?
I can't tell.
Yeah.
Okay.
It probably does, but it's not like when it happens, it's not really correlated to me going to bed really aroused or anything.
It just
seems sort of random.
I think it's a dream. It's been so long. I don't really even know. I'm thinking there's a good chance I'm going to experience that in the next couple of months. If
you could hope.
I can keep my hands.
Pray to St. Joseph.
Yeah. Maybe I can direct my frustration at St. Augustine.
Like, so you feel like there's a stronger mental capacity that allows you to overcome the physiological sensation. Is that how you feel that your current state is?
Yes. I think first you have to want to be chaste, and because if you can't be living with these contradictions, they just bubble up and they lead to the physiological symptoms, I think. So I think the decoupling was one thing, and the other thing is just like shunning sexual desire. Like I don't see sex as bad. I don't see sexual desire as bad. But if I'm going to abstain, it's disordered for me to be lying down just fantasizing about my wife. So like being okay with not wanting that desire, that, and then the decoupling, those are, yes, activities of the mind. And then I believe, like you said, that makes it a lot easier for me physically.
I personally, as I've gotten older, I what do I say? I could do without sex easier, I think, than I could when I was younger. Like I obviously enjoy it and look forward to it, but I don't really like. We have a really good relationship, whether we get to or not. But it is that I don't know, that physical buildup of pressure inside. And we've talked about, like, if there is a way to just program your mind to discharge things every few days in the middle of the night, and you kind of woke up with some relief, I would be all for that. Like I would just, just kind of like, it's kind of like, I don't know, you go to the bathroom when you feel the urge to go to the bathroom, and you eat when you're hungry, and it, if you could get rid of that sensation,
unload,
I'd be plumb happy. Not,
yeah.
I mean that, and maybe I'm just approaching it all wrong, but that's kind of, at my age, that's kind of how I look at it. So is it getting back to Augustine, then would you say primarily the motivation is if I do this, it's a mortal sin, I might go to hell, or is it more so I see positive value? I mean, because you can always go to confession, right? So is it more you see positive value in redirecting, I guess, if you will, your energy or your focus towards other things? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think it's both, but primarily the latter. And
Okay.
I was thinking about this earlier, and I think, if we talk too much about sin, I think we're losing kind of the Christian message, because I think the bar to heaven is relatively low,
Yeah.
but he doesn't ask us just to like meet the bar. He calls us to be excellent, to be like the best we can be. And so I think a lot about that, and chastity for me is a way of trying to be better.
And I'm not here to tell you, to discourage you from that. That's all great, and I think we should all aspire to that. Where I struggle with, and kind of getting back to the sort of the title, if you will, of this, I have no problem with the idea that masturbation, obviously, when it's coupled with porn and all that, can be very disordered and can be sinful and not even. I don't think anyone that does it enjoys doing it, and so it's not something, I don't think I would ever encourage as a practice. But I think it's one thing to say that something is bad or can be bad, and I think it's another thing to say it's so bad that it's intrinsically evil and can never be done, and it's a mortal sin. Is where that's the part of it where I just find myself unpersuaded by that, and maybe that's just me. But to me, I mean, you seem to be handling this much better than I have historically, and most of the guys.
You're doing amazing, though. For 6 days, you're doing amazing.
Right. So when for a lot of guys, when it happens, I'm just imagining the guy. Let's say it's postpartum, and you got this buildup. You're sitting on the edge of the bed trying to get to sleep, and you don't want to be a burden on your wife, and you're like, okay, this will allow me to fall asleep. It's hard for me to understand why, under those circumstances, that would be a mortal sin.
Well, and 2352 covers that,
and
it's a force of habit.
Well, I don't know. I just, that's where I just have a hard time understanding it could possibly be intrinsically evil. And I'm curious, setting aside what the church says, not that it's, but do you have a compelling explanation for why that would just be intrinsically evil, even under those circumstances, when that's obviously the motivation there?
You mean where the circumstances are?
Yeah, it's the poor sap that's, his wife gave birth 4 weeks ago, and they can't do anything, and he's trying to.
So all of us.
Yeah, can't fall asleep at night. He wants to be able to, go to his work tomorrow and provide for his family, and he just wants a release.
Yeah.
Walk me through, in your mind, how that is still clearly so intrinsically evil, and that guy should go to hell if he does it knowingly and willingly.
Yeah. That's difficult for me to answer, because I'm not, I haven't really dug into this, like why. To me, I try to be obedient. I mean, there are times in the past where I've questioned church teaching, like on NFP, for example, and I've always been humbled later. As more like I dig into it, and then I buy a book, I read the first quarter, and I'm like, oh, I'm an idiot. Of course, like all the smartest people of the past 2 millennia, they've thought about this, and I should just shut this book and stop thinking about it. And that's happened before. And so for me, masturbation is sort of the same thing. I open the catechism, it says intrinsically evil. I'll just accept it and obey the church. I don't really have any insight beyond that.
Okay, that's fair, and that's what I was. I'm just very interested in the why. I
Well,
get the rule. I get what it is.
And
But
I don't think anybody should be driving the masturbators away from the church. You know, like, I mean, God's mercy is available to everybody. I mean, I'm sure, I would hope that God is understanding. And maybe it depends on what's in our heart, I guess, you know, when that happens.
Well, what were the most compelling reasons you've heard of why it's evil?
what are the most? I haven't found one.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you know, we kind of went through this when we did episode, was it 250 a while ago? You know, to me, I mean, here's my honest, semi-heretical view of it. It's got that ick factor. Okay, I get it's that weird icky thing that we no one really and there's, and you know, in his story, and I think
It's generally a secret sin.
yeah, you typically don't go around advertising that you
Brag
do
about
it
it online and get a podcast about it.
right. Right. But I think the sexual drive is, I mean, it drives us crazy. Like I get that, and I think man especially has been trying to harness this and incorporate it in his life without being driven crazy by it since the beginning of time. And I don't see us making a lot of progress on it. And so it seems as though it's taken on a life of its own, and we've got these serious spiritual connotations to it that have kind of been, you know, and also, you know, it was just bad biology in the past. They used to think you only had so many guns in the bullets in the chamber, and you were wasting your seed, and it may even be a tiny human that's dying on the ground, and
It's disturbing to think about.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of organic material that went into this teaching that I think, to me, gives me some skepticism as to why we, not that, like I said, not that it's sinful, but that it's one of the very, very few things that's intrinsically evil, that you can never do it. Like you couldn't save a group of babies in a burning building to do it. Like,
quite the circumstance.
I mean, that's extreme, but
Need the fire hose. Bring out the fire hose. Oh, boy, that's also bad.
So it's really just that I, and I'm wondering, and you can comment on that, but do you think at all that your past, let's say, addiction to this, and I know a lot of guys really struggle and have these addictions. I'm thankful that that hasn't been my problem, but do you think, as someone who formerly felt really under the control of this, that influences how you look at it now?
Yeah, that's probably right. And the other thing too is I mean, why is it that, you know, like, for example, we're called to be charitable, but charity is like a spectrum. But at some point, if you're like so uncharitable, there's like a floor, and then it becomes a sin, right? Like if you insult someone in public or something, like calumny or that sort of thing. So I think with chastity is something similar. Like we can all aim higher than we currently are, but if you just keep going, if you keep getting more and more, like less and less chaste, at some point there's a floor, and the church declares like, okay, you've gone too far. And maybe that's where masturbation is. It's like maybe the church expects, at the very least, for people not to do that.
I mean, I have no problem with the idea, if you want to be a saint, you don't do that. But
everybody should want to be a saint.
Yeah, but the standard, the standard, I don't think, is if you don't rise to the level of sanctity, you're damned. Like there's that is the part of this stuff that I struggle with. Like I think it takes heroic virtue to do what you do. Like you deserve a lot of credit. Like I consider you
amazing.
Yeah, I consider you heroically virtuous in this stuff based on what you described. Most of us don't or can't do that. Maybe don't is the better word. But I don't think that makes everyone else fodder for hell because of that. That's where I really struggle. It seems to me there ought to be the damned, the saints, and then everyone in the middle, kind of, jostling for position.
I do feel like James is the Michael Jordan of chastity. like you see, like he just comes out and shoots like 7 3-pointers in a row, and it's no big deal. I don't know.
Well, I think we sort of hurt each other. We hurt each other because on Twitter, like I see you started posting about like your journey, and I thought that was heroic. Like, it's awesome. You've been struggling with NFP, and rather than masturbating, you're trying to do this really difficult thing of abstinence, and no one does this. The trads don't do it. The progressives don't. Like, no one is doing this. Sex is awesome to everyone all the time, and so I was like encouraging. But then you have these responses. They're like, "Oh, this is so sad. It's so tragic. Your marriage is gonna fail."
Yeah.
I'm just like, who are these losers? Like,
I don't see any of them in the comments yet.
Yeah. And so part of it too is maybe it's cultural. Like, we're more likely to be slack on things if everyone else around us is slack. But if we're encouraging each other, maybe it gets easier.
So a lot of these no-fap guys on YouTube, they talk about all these superpowers they gain, like telekinesis and all kinds of wild crap. Do you experience anything that's beneficial from this, that you think like you get an energy boost or mental energy or anything like that?
In terms of physiologically, I can't say that's true. It has brought peace and joy to my marriage, though. Like, our marriage, we've talked about this, and it goes against what everyone's saying on Twitter. We are the happiest we've ever been in our marriage.
That gives me hope. I like hearing that.
That's great, man.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe like we pray with each other. We have dinner together, and the kids every night. We pray with each other before we go to bed. We're very open about all these things, and so that's been the biggest benefit, kind of the joy that comes with it.
If I can ask, and you don't have to answer this, but and let me just preface with my experience. This is something I solely struggle with. My wife, has no struggles whatsoever with this stuff. I'm curious, is it a similar dynamic for your wife, or how would you describe her sort of whole ability to follow all this stuff?
Yeah, that was a struggle for me to see how easy it was for her.
Yeah. Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Not
fair, is it? It's not fair.
Oh, sure. We're no sex.
Yeah. See you 2 months, buddy. Remind me when the 2 months comes around. Otherwise, I might just forget.
Yeah, and actually, that was there was some resentment there. It was like, wow, okay, especially like I was saying, if I'm coupling sex with love, it's like, oh, so she doesn't really love me as much as I thought she did. I didn't really think that, but subconsciously, I mean, that's how it felt.
Sure.
Yeah, I understand that.
Absolutely.
So that was definitely a struggle in the beginning for me. But again, like for her now, because it's sort of a painful experience, she doesn't want it.
So do you anticipate that things will change and that you guys can resume that in the future and maybe have kids, or is it just totally unknown?
Yeah, no, it's the condition she has takes about 2 to 3 years to fully heal. Wow. I'm expecting, like, I don't know, but I'm thinking that she'll be able to have sex like earlier than that, but I don't know.
I wouldn't think about it too much. Then.
Exactly.
Yeah. We want to keep the streak alive, buddy.
Right.
I'll assume it's 6 years.
Oh, wow. Now we can be pleasantly surprised if it's shorter, right?
There you go.
Wow.
So yeah.
Well, I
want to add one thing, which had made it easier. It has made it easier for me, and I was just reading the Roman Catechism. It talks about this, like how to become more chaste. It has like 6 different tips. One of it is custody of the eyes, and so just being very careful what I look at.
Mhm.
And so my wife and I, at some point, I told her a couple months ago, like, hey, can you not can you not walk around the room naked? So that sort of thing has helped. Just watching what my eyes are focused on,
Yeah.
and my wife is now more careful with that sort of thing as well.
Mhm.
And it has helped that because of her skin condition, she wears very baggy, big clothes.
Mm.
So that's kind of like a blessing and a curse. Like, it has helped me.
Okay.
No, I
Interesting.
get that. And
Yeah.
that's tough because I don't really watch any movies that are risky, or sometimes things happen in movies that you can't predict. But
Yeah.
I do try to watch what I listen to and look at, but I don't know. It's difficult, man.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, this has been very interesting. The one thing I want to one thing I want to recap on them. I think we'll maybe go to a couple comments here. Is the thing that I personally find that, like I said, that 6-day wall, like I totally relate to that.
Absolutely.
And and for me with NFP, it's like I got to go through that damn thing every single month, like in
Right.
um and that's what it wore me out. It just wears me out mentally, because you're just like, you got to get through that, and then you get some relief, and then you're already okay, and I get to go back onto that. It's that up and down roller coaster that I find really difficult to do. I have yet to figure out how to master that.
How to tame the roller coaster.
Yeah, and so that's why I decided I'm just gonna try nothing for 2 months.
And I'm gonna like it.
It hasn't, knock on wood, it hasn't been as bad as I thought it would be, but
Don't knock on wood too hard.
Yeah,
that's right.
Good one. Yeah, I mean, because I've kind of been public with it, I think I have sort of an artificial motivation to finish it, that if it was just me
complaining to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a poor
he's a poor accountability partner. So I think I can do it, but it's I don't know. But at the same time, though, here's the problem. I'm not in your situation. We can, we can be intimate, and it brings enormous blessings to our marriage. Mm-hmm. And I'm we are losing that. Our marriage is not falling apart through this, but we are giving up something really, really wonderful because of that. And mm-hmm. I'm still trying to process my feelings on that, because I feel bad that we're giving up something so wonderful and life-giving to our marriage, because I haven't figured out how to ride that roller coaster without going crazy.
Yeah, no, I think that's a real tension in the teaching that I haven't fully understood yet, which is like sex in marriage is a beautiful thing, but at the same time, if your marriage depends on it, what are you going to do if your wife gets sick? What are you going to do in old age? What are you like? Sex is kind of a fickle thing, and so you can't really depend on it for the happiness of your marriage, even though it is also a beautiful, happy thing. So it's a paradox.
There's all kinds of medications for older age, so we're not too worried about that yet.
Okay. That's where my pragmatic side could very easily see God saying, here, I'm going to give you guys a whole toolbox of options, how to make stuff happen and how to relieve the sexual tension when life throws you curveballs. To me, that seems more plausible to me than this Augustinian view of the world that we as Catholics seem obligated to follow. But maybe that's just my concupiscence. But
yeah, I actually think that's a product of the internet, and I was kind of alluding to that today on Twitter, which is now when people have issues with their faith or with church teaching, they just go on the internet and they try to figure it out. They read encyclicals, they read St. Augustine, they read Reddit, whatever it is. and we're all trying to interpret the rules. But I feel like historically, you would just go to your priest, and he would sort of take the catechism, take the teachings, take all that, and then listen to you and take your circumstance and give you kind of the diagnosis, and then you, under obedience, would just follow that. And I feel like that approach was probably a lot more flexible than what we have now, where everyone's kind of his own church trying to decipher the rules.
Well, I've been battling this almost as long as the internet's been around, so I don't know.
Oh man, that's really funny.
So I don't know.
You were there before Google existed.
Exactly. I was out there dusting off the library books trying to find it.
Well, what does your priest tell you? Have you like when you talked about these things, or have you not?
Generally, they don't even worry about it.
They're more lenient than the letter of the law, I think.
The trad priests,
it
are a little more rigid about it, but so
and like fundamentally, if we listen to our pastor, shouldn't we have a clear conscience? I don't know.
Yeah, in here, I'll be honest with you. My decision to kind of adopt the NoFap thing is more about, I just tend to find solo not all that helpful, more than any moral objection in priests. Many priests have said, don't worry about it so much, but I find it more unhelpful than I do morally problematic. So that's my journey to
I can see that too.
Distancing myself from that. It doesn't really help. And what it does do is it can create that resentment in the back of your mind that towards your wife, if you're not careful, like, well, if she would just be more available, I wouldn't have to do this. And I think I think a lot of us probably battle those thoughts, rightly or wrongly.
Yeah. No, that's true.
So, yeah, I don't know. And maybe the church is in an impossible situation. To me, I don't want anyone, my sons or anyone, falling into these addictive habits. And I can see how, if there is no, discouragement of that, it can be a really problematic habit.
But I also don't want people leaving the church because they have a wife that can't, or I've been near a difficult situation.
I've been near spiritual despair over this stuff. And I think that, to me, that seems unnecessary given the nature of this and how it, at least in my experience, tends to be one of these kind of break glass in case of emergency situation in my marriage more than a habitual thing. But
when you say it doesn't help you, like, so when you hit that 6-day wall, and if you were to, go solo, then in what way does it not help you? Doesn't it relieve the pressure?
It at the moment, like you can fall asleep, right? It kind of takes the edge off of it, but the next day it's kind of back. It's
kind of a bummer, like, as far as like, because you want to save that for your wife. Yeah. Like, I think in a lot of ways.
There's something about, I don't know why, but if you are intimate with your wife, we call it the bliss period. You get a solid day, 2 days where it's just like the slate is clear, right? And you're just, you don't get that kind of lasting relief from solo, or maybe I'm doing it wrong. I don't know.
You've had a lot of practice. I don't know.
So that's that to me. What you get out of it isn't worth the price of admission. So that's kind of my approach to it. But and obviously it's like, well, the church says what it says. So if I could just wave a magic wand and never do that, it's been a while. But
don't want to say how many days, but
yeah, I would love nothing more than this never be part of my life. But I also don't think it's some overwhelming moral travesty, because you can spend a whole lot of damn time fighting this, and when that time could be spent, I don't know, growing in virtue and becoming a better person. It just, to me, it seems to take an insane amount of mental energy to hold those stallions in the stable. That's just me.
I think too that it's so funny that both you and I had the same thoughts at our wedding day. Well, I'm done with this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's so not true.
Yeah.
Well, back to Jonah's point about, why is the church, the church shouldn't be turning away people who have this issue. Again, I think my point about the internet is relevant again, because I think if these people, rather than going to Reddit or wherever, Twitter, if they actually went to a priest, maybe they wouldn't be turned away. So maybe the issue is really all these rad trads or whoever who are turning people away on the internet. Like, that's the real problem.
It's true, and that's honestly a fair point. I agree with you.
Yeah, this is very much a kind of a modern first world problem. Is I talk to more people, it seems like we're the only ones dwelling on this stuff as compared to, let's say, more third world countries or second world countries, and just even different cultures in general. This seems to be a U.S. We just kind of get crazy.
Well, it is true though. Like you see on Twitter all the time, the trads, you're going to hell for this. You're going to hell. Everybody's going to hell.
Yeah.
That's not a good place.
Yeah, and you guys make it even harder on yourselves by having a whole podcast dedicated to talking and thinking about sex.
Well, I spent 20 years trying to fix this, and I got so sick of it. I was like, I'm going to go out and I'm either going to get some answers, or I'm going to warn the world, don't get married, because you're going to hate it. I've come around a little bit, but I still,
And who would have thought when we started this podcast that a year and a half into it, you'd be going on an abstinence journey? You would have thought you would have said, I'm already abstinent.
Yeah, right. Life, you just never know where life's going to lead you.
Yeah.
But it's been so wonderful, though. I mean, I would have never met you.
It has been great.
It's opened up the world, opened up us to so many different people and different experiences, and I love sharing these kinds of things with other people and getting to know people and whatever. So I feel blessed more than anything.
Yeah, I'm really grateful you guys are doing it, because because of my conversion, the Catholics I know I'm not super close with, so I can never talk about this stuff. Yeah. Even though it is like, there are real issues, and but sometimes it's kind of isolating because I have no one to talk about it with.
That I think was the bit. What I hope we can do here is to, it's kind of, everyone knows, we don't want to condone it. We're not condoning, but just let people be okay talking about it and understanding you're not the only one, and everyone kind of deals with these things in a little same way, and it's okay to struggle together. I think that's really what we try to promote.
And I think through this, we have found two guys like James. Remember that one guy that did the Cloak of St. Joseph prayer? So we've met two legitimate guys, two unicorns that can literally do this. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of people that struggle with this.
Yeah, well, and that's another thing. The people, and someone's mentioning this in the comments, the people who are chasing after chastity are not talking about sex with anyone. So you're going to have even a harder time finding them, because they're, on purpose, they don't talk about sex because it helps them be chaste.
Maybe. Yeah, that could be. I just, to me, it seems like it's such a regular part of our life that we should be able to talk about it with a little bit of levity. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. That's sort of been our approach. So some people find our humor a little bit off-putting, but I don't know. I find it I don't know another way to deal with it. So,
No.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's been good. It's only, I guess it's been about an hour. Right?
Yeah, it's been an hour.
Okay. Well, I know we got some comments in here. Let's handle one of Jonah 2.0's thing here.
He loves arguing about masturbation.
Yeah, that guy. I think he's compensating for something. There was one here I'm looking for. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. It was one of his first ones. Can you see that on the screen, James?
Yes.
Okay. So he said, please address my perennial argument that Jesus
Does condemn
unchastity, and masturbation simply has to be unchaste. I don't know. Do you want to try that first, James? I'm sure you'll do a better Catholic answer than I'll give.
Well, yeah, that does seem correct. I can't really expound on it. It makes sense. If I don't know what passage he's talking about, but yeah, that seems correct.
I suspect he's talking about the one where if you look at a woman with lust, perhaps. Is that what he means? Or is there a different one?
Yeah, I don't know if he's got a specific passage in mind or if Jonah's still there, but I guess I would say this.
Wait, before you answer, I would just he doesn't explicitly forbid masturbation,
right?
He'll condemn unchastity, like he'll condemn impatience or things that lack love, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's saying those things send you to hell. So there's some nuance there,
right? And I just think I don't think it follows that because we, let's say, view masturbation as unchaste, that if we deny it, that it's a matter of chastity, that we're rejecting Jesus. I mean, Jesus could have just said, guys, don't masturbate, or whatever.
Like a direct.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't have taken, I don't know how long it'd taken an Aramaic, but I don't think it would have.
Write this down, John.
Yeah.
This is important.
Yeah. Seems.
Well, does he not?
Like it could have been.
Does he not condemn fornication, and masturbation could be seen as fornication with yourself?
Yeah, see, I think you're taking.
I mean, and I understand that, the interpretation, but I think it's a stretch. I'd like it to be more clear. I think, if possible.
I guess I don't view it as.
But I don't know if
myself.
You're right. If the word in Aramaic for fornication and masturbation was the same, then maybe. I don't know.
I mean, to me, I've never struggled with fornication, assuming it's kind of limited to the conventional definition and doesn't include every sexual pitfall. But adultery, I mean, I've never even been remotely tempted to do any of that stuff. Whereas this is just part and parcel to most people, especially men's daily life, that seems like somewhere in scripture they could have come right out and say, guys, we know you're going to struggle with this. Don't do it. Like, I don't know. To me, that I think something this ubiquitous, is that the right word? Ubiquitous. This common seems like it could have fallen on the Lord's radar, as opposed to kind of like, I don't know, leaving it unsaid and leaving it up to vague interpretation that eventually Thomas Aquinas in the 1200s would get around. I mean, that to me, I just don't find that all that persuasive. I think something like this, I think the Lord would be very direct.
Well, and I kind of, the Leviticus rule actually seems fine. It's Leviticus 15, chapter 15, 16 to 18. If a man orgasms on his own or with another person, he is unclean or must take a bath and then wait till sundown to be clean again. Sure.
Yeah, more of a yeah, it was more of a not a.
I'm fine with that rule. If you got to do
fine,
that,
whatever.
Already in the shower most of the time, anyway.
Oh,
God.
yeah.
Yeah.
You comply with the letter of the law.
I don't know if I got it like with the mosaic. I got to get a separate shower for that, maybe.
Let's see. Yeah. I mean, I think to me, I think that it's just there's enough. I don't know, strange stuff in the history of the teaching that is sort of baked into some. I would say some ideas that we now know are not true. That I think it's fair to question whether Jesus meant that or why he wouldn't have just come right out and said it.
The only verse that I can find that would seem to suggest an anti-masturbatory stance would be Matthew chapter 5, verse 28. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So I get that, to a certain, but there's also a difference as far as.
But then you have the sin of lust. Then I mean,
sure, but can you lust over your wife then? Like, so if you're thinking about your wife, are you thinking about another woman? Are you thinking about like some sort of meta version of your wife? I don't know.
Yeah, and I sort of like. I'm reading this book, Contraception by John T. Noonan. Kind of
what? You're reading that book?
Yeah.
Thought Craig had the only copy of that book.
Yeah, I'm about halfway through. That's a slog. How far?
Oh yeah, well, I'm skipping some parts. I'm page 391, a bit past half, like 2/3 in.
So the guy that has basically conquered sexual sin decided to read a book on contraception. Like, why?
Why expose yourself to that?
Yeah. Well, it was because there's this, Christian Wagner.
Not the Walmart.
Yeah, Walmart Thomist.
Yeah, he blocked me a long time ago.
Oh, really? He had an episode with a theologian, and the theologian really recommended this book. And apparently that guy, the theologian, is writing a book on NFP. So I'm kind of like, it's just a subject I find interesting.
Well, I do too. And I mean...
But sorry, just to finish my point, the thing is, I'm open to the teaching on masturbation changing because I could see what you're saying. I mean, the book sort of displays that a little bit, how wrong thinkings in biology led to some of these rules.
Yeah.
However, I have to be obedient to the magisterium. Like if the magisterium tells me that it's evil, I have to assent to it. I don't really. I mean, if I want to be in God's good graces, that's sort of part of the game.
And I don't think it should be changed. I just think it should be more of a change of approach, maybe, where people don't feel like they need to leave the church over sexual rules, perhaps. I don't know.
I don't necessarily disagree with that, and maybe because I have not yet harnessed this Jedi-like control you have.
Jedi, like it is like a Jedi.
All I know is I don't sit up in the middle of the night unable to sleep because I'm really struggling with the concept of Mary's perpetual virginity, which I have some intellectual difficulties with. Like, I really don't have a hard time deferring ideas as much as I do stuff that actually, like, I don't know. This is my body. This is physically affecting me. Like,
and that's how
that's where I make the distinction.
That's what I said on Twitter the other day. Is I don't think Augustine is going to save me in the middle of the night.
No.
No.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe, and this is where it's a bit of a challenge. Like, it sounds like in past postpartum periods you've sort of cheated. And now when I asked you about that, you said you're willing to die. I don't know how serious you were, but you're willing to die to succeed. And I was like, all right, like, cool. That's what Christ wants. He wants you to do violence to yourself to be virtuous. Like, subdue your passions, go all out. Like, tell your wife to wear burqa if she needs to. Like,
I'm gonna need a hair shirt here by the time we're done.
But...
I mean, I've always said, I mean, I'm on a mission to finish this sucker because I'm stubborn more so than virtuous, but I hope maybe I'll grow virtuous in the process. But I've never said you can't do this stuff, but I'm telling you, the amount of energy and mental bandwidth I'll commit to this is going to be enormous. And and as a husband and father of 9 and a busy guy, like that limits the supply of me that I have to give to all these other things that are also very important. And so I say that I think I can do this for 2 months. I think I can. I'm not even sure I can, but I think I can. But just out of grit and determination and hopefully some grace from the Lord. But as a regular thing, I don't think it's as regularly sustainable as what I'm saying.
But we know that Onan was struck down in the Bible, but if Craig Onan would die from like some kind of prostatic explosion or something like that, be quite a story.
It would be. It would be.
Testicular, I don't know, breakdown. I don't know what could happen, but apparently people can do it. So good luck.
If I get canonized out of it, that's fine. You're the weirdest patron saint.
Saint Onan.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Anything else, James?
No, I think that was it.
You're an inspiration, man. I'll tell you that. It was great talking to you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm really grateful for your podcast, and I hope, I hope it does inspire.
Yeah, I'm really grateful that you came on, and I have a much better perspective on where you come from, and I'm appreciative of that. And we'll definitely catch up with you over on Twitter. So,
and I'm wildly impressed.
And good luck to you and your wife. I hope she recovers quickly.
Thank you.
So yeah, best of luck to you, and thank you everyone who showed up in the comments, contributed, even you, Jonah 2.0. And okay, all right, James, thank you.
Thank you.
Talk to you later, everyone.
Bye bye.